Hi there, religion students. It's nice to see you for our video class. This is for Tuesday, April 23rd. I hope this finds you all well whenever you're watching this. Just a couple of reminders about how we're going to do these videos. We'll do a lecture and I will break it up into two videos. They'll be labeled part one and part two. And I'm thinking, 15 to 20 minutes on each of those. So 30 or 40 minutes in total, not too long. So please make sure you watch them both and please make sure that you take notes on them just like a regular class. I'll expect you to be familiar with the material that we cover in these, okay? So this is the point in class, and I'm going to go ahead and do it where I would say, good morning, religion students, whenever you happen to be watching this. And I'm glad to at least be able to have class with you this way today. So let's kind of remember where we left off. We are talking about, and I wrote a few things on my, remember this is going to be like the whiteboard in the classroom. We're talking about the ultimate end of things. That's our big topic. And then within that, we're talking about the death and afterlife. And we talked about how that was envisioned in Hinduism and Judaism. And then we started to talk about how it's envisioned in Christianity. And that's what we're going to wrap up in this first part of the video lecture. And so what we're specifically focusing on now is the understanding of the afterlife. What happens after the end of this physical life, according to the Christian understanding. Now, let's remember that we've said a couple of things already in class. We said that there is a belief that the soul lives on after the physical body has died. And we talked about this really particular Christian concept of the communion of saints. The idea that all Christians are united together with one another, both those who are living in this world and those who have died and have passed on to the next world, and that they're all connected together and that they're all connected with God as well. That's the idea of the communion of saints. And so that right there tells you about this idea that the soul lives on in an afterlife after this physical life has ended, because there's still a connection between those who have died and those who are alive in this world. But what I still would like to talk about is what's actually understood to happen to the soul that lives on in the afterlife once this physical body has died and the physical life has ended. And Christianity largely divides its conception of the afterlife into two things. Some Christians, Catholics, for example, in particular, also have kind of an understanding of kind of a third possibility for the afterlife. I will briefly mention that. I won't talk a whole lot about it. But the other two are ideas that are in some way or another shared really by all Christians. So we'll start with the most negative and end with the most positive, because that's kind of how I like to do things. So one possibility for the person's soul that survives in the afterlife once this physical life is ended is the possibility of hell. And in Christianity, hell's fundamental characteristic in Christianity is that it is a separation from God. Okay. And so if the idea is that the destiny of a person, the goal of human life is to be connected to God, to be united or one with God, hell is the total failure of that goal. Hell is where the person's soul is totally separated from God. So that is one possibility. And there's lots of ways that hell is envisioned. It's envisioned as suffering and pain and punishment. And while all of that is definitely, historically, has definitely been a part of the Christian picture of hell, ultimately what it is it's a state of separation. It's a state of separation of the human soul from God. That is its fundamental characteristic. And if hell is a place of pain, it is the pain of separation ultimately, where the human soul is not one with God. Now, Catholics, before I get on to the last part of this, I'm just going to have a sort of a brief side note here. Catholics have a belief that is generally not shared by most other Christians, and that is their belief in something called purgatory. So we'll just mention that. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it. But this is a particular Catholic belief. Protestant churches, very early in the semester, we talked about the Protestant Reformation and the separation of those churches from the Catholic Church. Protestant churches generally do not believe in this idea of purgatory, but the Catholic Church does. Okay. And so we have this idea of this thing called purgatory. Purgatory also refers to a state after death, in the afterlife, once the physical life has ended. What makes it different from both hell and heaven, however, is that purgatory is a temporary state. It's not a state that lasts forever. And the word purgatory, it literally just means purification. Okay, that's what it means. And purgatory, again, just to kind of keep this brief and simple, purgatory is the idea in Catholicism that after a person has died, a person who has died who will eventually end up in heaven may still need to experience some purification in the afterlife before they're able to be united with God finally in heaven. And so purgatory refers to this period of purification. It's an afterlife. A person's physical body has died, but their soul is purified in this state of purgatory. Now, a couple of clarifications here. Purgatory is for those who will end up in heaven. It's not like it's unclear where you're going to end up, hell or heaven. Purgatory is for those who will eventually be in heaven. It is those who have been saved and will eventually be one with God. But the idea is they're not ready when they die to be in heaven and one with God. And so purgatory refers to this period of purification through which they prepare to be one with God in heaven. And again, it's a pretty distinctive Catholic belief. You don't really find that in the Protestant churches, okay? But then finally, and this is the one that I want to spend a little more time on, we have the idea in Christianity of heaven, okay? And again, hell and heaven are ideas shared by all Christians. Purgatory is the one that is not necessarily. And if you just sort of skip over purgatory, if you think of hell as separation, what is the key quality of heaven? Well, it's very simply, it's union. Heaven is union. It is when the human soul is united with God. And in Christianity, that is seen as the ultimate goal of human life, is for the person to be united with God. Heaven is when that goal is reached. It is union of the human soul with God. Now, just like with hell, there's a lot of visual imagery here, right? It's a place of joy and pleasure, and there's clouds and music and sort of wonderful, just sort of everything seems very pleasurable and wonderful. But again, all of this is a way of talking about what is the ultimate satisfaction, the ultimate joy of heaven. It's that the person is now one with the divine, and that is the goal of human existence. Now, Christianity does have a very particular way of describing what happens to the human soul in purgatory or in heaven, and this is really worth talking about because I think it's one of the really distinctively Christian ideas. Although I will say, now that I say that, what I'm going to say, it actually sounds pretty similar to something that we talked about with the vision of the afterlife in Judaism as well. So we'll kind of note a little pattern there between the two religions. But what Christianity talks about is something that happens in heaven. And let's be really clear, this happens in heaven, okay? It's no other part of the afterlife. This is something that is unique to heaven. And it is something that is referred to in Christianity as the beatific vision. And what the beatific vision refers to, actually, let me hold that up there for just a minute. That's something you'll need to write down, the beatific vision. And what this refers to, so just an explanatory note, the reason it's called the beatific vision is that what it refers to is what the souls in heaven see. What is it that they're looking at? What is it, the vision that they have when they are in heaven? And the word beatific means to be blessed. So this is, what do those who are blessed in heaven, what are those souls who are in heaven, what do they see when they're in heaven? And very simply, what the beatific vision refers to is that those who are in heaven see God completely. They know the divine totally, completely. That's the beatific vision. It is seeing God completely, knowing God completely. And that is seen as the ultimate goal of human existence in Christianity. The human's goal is to see and know God totally. It's another way of saying that you're united with God totally. And that's the idea of the beatific vision. Now, the way this is described traditionally in Christianity, and I've made a reference in one way or the other to this idea in lots of different discussions about religion this semester, is that the beatific vision is like a face-to-face vision of God. That's a really, really important description. It's a face-to-face vision of God. It's where you're looking at God face-to-face. That's the idea of the beatific vision. And in looking at God face to face, you're seeing God completely. That's the idea of the beatific vision. Now, if you think about it, we've seen similar ideas. In Judaism, in our last class, when we talked about the Olam Haba, the world to come, remember that one description in Judaism, people in the world to come sit with crowns on their heads and enjoy the radiance of God's presence, radiance, light. And so again, there's this idea of kind of seeing God's presence, this vision of God's presence, this time really imaged as light. So I noticed this kind of comparative pattern between Christianity and Judaism here. They both talk about the experience of the afterlife as a seeing God, being in God's presence in the sense of light or vision. And another thing I think we could really relate this to, everybody. In fact, I asked you about this on the second exam. If you remember in Hinduism, in the puja ritual in devotional Hinduism, what was one of the ideas of what happened during the worship of the image of the God? There was that idea of darshan, vision, that the person looked at the image of the God and the God's image was looking back at you. And there was union in this shared gazing between the human being and the God. Well, again, you have a really similar idea here. Now, the difference is in Hinduism, that takes place in the midst of a ritual in this life, in this world. And in Christianity, you're talking about the beatific vision as something in heaven. But I guess I just want you to notice that in all three of these religions, there is this imagery of a scene of the divine, a scene of the God. And in that scene, there is this uniting, there is this coming to know the God. And in the beatific vision in Christianity, it's this idea that we know God totally, we know God completely. It's this face-to-face vision of God in heaven. And that's really seen as the goal of human life. So, let's maybe just say one other idea about how Christianity talks about the afterlife, and I'll relate this to heaven in particular, and that is that Christianity also talks about this idea in the afterlife of what's called the resurrection of the body. Okay, the resurrection of the body. The word resurrection just means to be raised, okay? So the resurrection of the body, the raising up of the body. And what Christianity says, now you have to understand this, resurrection of the body is it's not something that is understood to happen right when a person dies. The resurrection of the body in Christianity is something that is understood to happen at the end of time, when the world ends, when time ends, when history ends, when everything ends. And that's also associated with the return of Christ, the second coming of Christ. When the world ends and Christ returns, in Christianity, one of the things that is understood to happen is this thing called the resurrection of the body. And what that means in Christianity is that at the end of the time, while our soul has lived on in the afterlife, our body has not. But at the end of time, when everything ends and Christ returns, our body will also be resurrected. And then our soul and our body together will live on in eternal life. That's the idea of the resurrection of the body. So Christianity says at the end of your individual life, your soul lives on, but your body does not. But at the end of everything, at the end of the world, at the end of time, and with the second coming of Christ, your body is resurrected. And it's resurrected in some sort of perfected form, but it is your body, and it's sort of in this perfected form, and it joins your soul, and then your soul and your body live on eternally. And I would ask you to just think for a second about why that idea is so important in Christianity. So if you just take a second and you think of someone that you know or someone that you love. And if you sort of got a picture of that person in your mind and you wanted to describe that person, one of the ways that we describe people is we describe them in terms of their physical form, what they look like, how tall they are, what they do with their body, what their hair looks like, what their eyes look like, how they interact with us physically. Our bodies are a really important part of who we are. I mean, our souls are important too, but our bodies are a really important part of who we are. And I think that that's really recognized in this Christian idea of the resurrection of the body. What it says is, yes, our souls live on in the afterlife, but eventually, at the end of time, our bodies will join our souls, and our body and soul together will live on eternally in the afterlife. I think what this is really a way of saying is that eternal life in Christianity, eternal life is for the whole person. It's the whole person that engages in eternal life, both body and spirit. That's really what the idea of the resurrection of the body is. Everything that you are, which is both your spirit and your body, will eventually live on eternally in the afterlife. And that's the idea of the resurrection of the body there. It's really about it being the whole person. Okay. All right. So listen, everybody, that finishes up, that wraps up for us the discussion of the afterlife in Christianity, and then of the more general big topic of the ultimate end of things. So I'm going to take a pause. We'll end this part one video, and then we'll do part two video where we'll start to discuss a new topic. All right. See you soon, everybody. Bye-bye. Hi there, religion students. Welcome to part two of our video lecture for Tuesday, April 23rd. Just one thing as I start the second part that I'm going to mention is that I have decided I am going to give you guys a reading response. I will post it sometime Tuesday, or maybe I'll even post it a little bit before, and it will be due on Thursday before class at 9:15 on Thursday, okay? And rather than take up time on the video explaining what the reading response is, if you just look on Canvas, you will see the reading response and what it is that I'm asking you to do there, okay? It will be over a short section of a chapter out of the book, and it's something that we'll talk about on Thursday of next week when I see you again in person. So please just make sure you look on Canvas for the reading response. That will be our last reading response that we do, okay? And it's going to be, I think it will be reading response number 8 is what it will be. So it'll be the last one, and I'm going to post it. I'll either post it Tuesday morning or maybe a little bit before Tuesday morning. So when you're watching this video, it should be posted on Canvas. Please just make sure you do that and make sure you get it done by 9:15 on Thursday and get it submitted, okay? So with that being said, I'm going to introduce this next topic for a minute, and then we'll actually get into it. So we are actually, for this and our last 2 classes in person of the semester, we are talking about the third part of our discussion of religion. And so it's part 3, rereading religion. So if you think about it, part 1 was all about the comparative study of religion as an academic practice. Part 2 of our class was all about actually comparing different religions together on conceptions of the divine and myth and ritual, and now the ultimate end of things. And we focused on Hinduism and Judaism and Christianity. Part 3, and the reason it's called rereading religion, and this is going to be brief. I mean, we're only really spending 2.5 classes or so on it. But part 3 is really simply, now that we've talked a lot about religion all semester long, kind of looking back at religion itself, not any one particular religion now, but just religion itself, and thinking about what are some ways we can understand what's happening within religion. Okay, so that's why it's called rereading religion. It's kind of thinking back about what we've learned and different ways of understanding what religion is and how we might interpret what religion is. So what I am going to focus on in this particular video, and this will focus on what we're going to do right now, and it'll also kind of set us up for what we're going to do in person in our last 2 classes, is in this video, what I'm going to focus on is what are called insider perspectives on religion. Okay, insider perspectives. And the key word there is an insider perspective on religion. So what do you think I mean by that? Well, very simply, an insider perspective on religion is how a religion is understood by a person who's actually a practicing member of that religion. Okay, so they're an insider to the particular religion. That's why it's called insider perspectives. How does a person who's actually a member of a religion understand that religion? That's an insider perspective. And as you might guess, there's also what are called outsider perspectives on religion. And that's what we're actually going to talk about when we get back in person. An outsider perspective would be exactly the opposite. An outsider perspective would be an attempt to explain a religion by a person who's not a member of that religion or is not a believer in religion more general. Insider perspectives are perspectives on religion by people who are believers in a particular religion. Okay, So they're insiders to the religion. That's why it's called that. So I'm not going to say really anything more about outsider perspectives because that's what we're going to talk about when we get in person, but just kind of like mention that insider is a perspective for someone who's actually a member. Outsider perspective is an understanding of religion from someone who's on the outside, who's not a believer or a member in a particular religion. So, the particular issue that I'm going to focus on is the issue of how does one religion understand itself in relationship to other religions? Okay, that's the insider perspective that I'm going to focus on. What are the different ways? Okay, and it's really important to get this initial question because everything we're going to talk about is going to go back to this question. If I'm a member of a particular religion, how do I understand my own religion in relationship or in comparison with other religions that are different from me? That's the insider perspective, the issue as an insider perspective that we're going to talk about on this video. Okay, so that's the question. How do I understand my religion? Okay, my religion. How do I understand my religion in relation to other religions? This is a question that people in religion ask themselves all the time. Okay, so if I remember, these are insider perspectives. So this is from the perspective of someone who belongs to a particular religion, right? So if I belong to a particular religion, and which religion it is could be anything for this discussion, right? If I'm a Christian, how do I understand Christianity in relationship to other religions? If I'm Jewish, how do I understand Judaism in relationship to other religions? If I'm a Hindu, how do I understand Hinduism in relationship to other religions? What religions they are is not really that important for this discussion. What's important for this discussion is if I'm an insider, if I am a practitioner of a particular religion, how do I understand my religion in relationship to other religions? That's really the question. Okay. Now, there are traditionally within these insider perspectives on religion, there's traditionally three different perspectives on that question. How do I understand my religion in relationship to other religions? All right. And so what we're going to do is we're going to briefly talk about each of these three perspectives. And on the middle one, the second one, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on that one because I'm actually going to read a little quote out of the book that's a really nice expression of that. But let's talk about the first perspective on this issue of how do I understand my religion in relationship to other religions. And I'm also actually going to try to draw a picture of each of these just to give you a little bit of a visual illustration, okay? So the first perspective on this issue is something called exclusivism, okay? Exclusivism. And if you think about it, that name will tell you a lot, right? What does it mean for something to be exclusive? It means it's only for one person or for one group of people, right? If I say I have an exclusive offer for you, what I'm saying is I have an offer that I'm going to make only to you. It's an offer that's just for you, right? And that tells you a lot about this perspective of exclusivism. What exclusivism says very simply, and again, what the religions are is irrelevant. I just want you to get the basic dynamic of how do I understand, if I'm an insider, how do I understand my religion in relationship to other religions? And what exclusivism says is my religion is the only religion that has truth in it. All other religions are by definition false. It is only my religion which is true. And everything else is wrong. And therefore, when it comes to the question of salvation, exclusivism says the only people who can be saved are people who belong to my religion. Everyone else has no possibility of salvation. So if we thought about kind of how we were to illustrate this, and for each of these illustrations, I'll kind of sort of take this idea of if we think about the religions as kind of like roads or pathways to God, how do each of these perspectives kind of understand their own religion in relationship to other religions? Okay, that's going to take me just a second to draw this. What exclusivism would say is something like this, okay? The road to God is really narrow. There's only one way to get to God, and that is my religion. My religion is the only one that has truth in it. My religion is the only one that can bring human beings to God and therefore can bring salvation to human beings. All other religions, by definition, are false, and have no possibility of salvation. So if you look at my illustration, there's only a very narrow path for human beings to get to God, and that is my own particular religion. In other words, my religion is exclusive. It's the only way that human beings get to God. All other religions are outside of that, and by definition, they're false, and they cannot bring a human being salvation or bring a human being to God. Okay, so that's exclusivism. My religion is the only right religion. Everything else is wrong. Salvation is not possible in any other religion. Now, there is a second perspective, and this is the one we're going to spend just a tiny bit more time on. The second perspective is something called inclusivism. Okay, inclusivism. If you think about it, again, the word will tell you something. Inclusivism means something like you're including others, right? You're including others who are different than you. That's the idea of inclusivism, right? So now I'll do the same thing as I did with the first one. I'll describe in words for a minute, and then I'll draw a picture to illustrate. What inclusivism says is something like this, okay? My religion is the highest and most complete truth about God there is, okay? So I'm listening. My religion has the highest truth, the most complete truth about God and about human beings relating to God. But there is truth that is found in other religions as well. Okay. It's just that those other religions are not as true as mine. They don't have as complete a truth or as high a truth as mine does. But that doesn't mean they're false. There are good things in other religions. There are truths in other religions. Human beings can reach God in other religions, but it is my religion that is the most complete truth. And it's my religion that is the highest truth there is in terms of coming to God. All right. So if we thought about how to illustrate this one's a little difficult to illustrate, but here would be kind of my best illustration of it. Inclusivism looks something like this, okay? The most complete, most high truth there is about God and about how to reach God is what you find in my religion, okay? My religion is the most true. And so you see, my religion is sort of like this really big thing that reaches up to God. But there are lesser truths in other religions, okay? And so I have those as just these little small kind of little lines that are kind of connected to my religion, all right? So in other words, my religion is the most truth, has the most truth, is the best way to reach the divine, but included within the truth of my religion are lesser truths that you find in other religions. So other religions can be good. Other religions do have truths in them, but it is my religion that is the best and the most complete truth, the highest truth. That's the idea of inclusivism. Okay. Now, let me say it this way. One thing that inclusivism does not say, it does not say that all religions are just equal to one another. That is not at all what inclusivism says. What it does say is while my religion may be the highest truth, there are lesser truths in other religions. Okay. And inclusivism would definitely say that salvation is a possibility for people in other religions. Okay. Again, it's my religion that provides the best, most complete path, the highest truth. But salvation is still possible for people in other religions as well. That's the idea of inclusivism. It includes others within the most complete, full truth of one's own religion. Now, everybody, I'm just going to spend a little more time on this because this is where we can really sort of take a second and look at what the Christian, most specifically the Catholic perspective is on this. And I'm really going to focus on the Catholic Church for just a second. Traditionally, throughout most of its history, the Catholic Church took an exclusivist position. Okay, the position was to be saved, to really know God, to really experience truth about God, you had to be Christian. Most specifically, you had to be Catholic, right? But in the 1960s, the Catholic Church really went through an updating of some of its ideas. And what that updating was called that updating was called was Vatican Council II. Okay, so Vatican Council II was a meeting where all of the church's leaders of the Catholic Church, all of the bishops of the church, came together over a 3-year period from 1962 to 1965. And the whole purpose of that council was an updating of the church, trying to bring the church kind of into the modern world and update it so it could be a part of the modern world. And one of the issues addressed by Vatican Council II was the issue of how does the Catholic Church understand itself in relationship to other religions. And so there was a document that was produced by all of the bishops of Vatican Council II. And that document, I'm going to give you the English title of it. It's a little bit of a long title, but it's a simple title. That document was called The Declaration on the Relation of the Church to non-Christian religions. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. The Declaration on the Relation of the Church to non-Christian religions. And it is in that document that the Catholic Church took an inclusivist position. Okay, this position that says, while the Catholic Church may have the highest truth, while Christianity may be the highest truth about God, there are truths in other religions as well. Okay, and so this is a place where I'd like for you to take a look at your book real quick. I'm going to read a little passage from that document for you. Okay, I'm just going to pause for just a second, and then we'll start again. Okay, hi there, religion students. Sorry, I got something happened at the end of part 2 of the video, and I thought I was pausing it, but I actually ended the recording. And so I'm going to do this one as part 3 just so I can pick up where I left off. So there will actually be, instead of 2 parts like I had originally planned, there will be 3 parts, part 1, 2, and 3. But this third part's going to be quite a bit briefer than the other 2 parts. I just kind of want to finish up what we were talking about. I had planned to just pause the video for a second and then start it over again, but it ended that recording. So we'll just pick up with this on part 3. So let me just take a second and just kind of remind us of where we were at. So we were talking about inclusivism, right? This view that my religion is the most complete truth and the highest way to get to God, that there are truths in other religions and salvation is possible for people in other religions. And I had mentioned that for the Catholic Church, this inclusivist position was really articulated at the Second Vatican Council. It's called Vatican Council II, which took place in the 1960s. And the purpose of this council was an updating of the church. And then I just had mentioned that at the council, there was this document that the bishops, the leaders of the Catholic Church put out called the Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions. And it was really in that document that you saw the Catholic Church move from what had traditionally been an exclusivist position to an inclusivist position. So if you look in your book on page 316, there's a couple of really interesting things on page 316. First of all, there's a really nice photo on that page. If you look on that page, you'll see a photo, and this is actually a photo of Vatican Council II. And so you can see this is taking place in the Vatican in Rome, which is sort of the worldwide headquarters of the Catholic Church, I guess you might say. And you can see that you're in this big church, and you can see all of these people along the 2 sides of the photograph. Those are all of the bishops of the church. There were about, at the height of this council, there were about 2,600 bishops who were attending this council and were participating in writing these documents and making these teachings that were an updating of the Catholic Church in the 1960s. And you can kind of see just a picture of what that looked like when it was going on. But if you look down towards the bottom of page 316, you will see, and like all of the quotes we've read out of the book this semester, it's in the indented section in the smaller type. You see this quote from that document from Vatican Council II, the Declaration on the Relation of the Church to Non-Christian Religions. And I'm going to read this to you and just notice how it really expresses this idea. First of all, there is truth in other religions. There are good things in other religions, but it is my religion that is ultimately the highest truth. Okay. And again, in this particular example, we're talking about Christianity being the highest truth and the Catholic Church saying that Christianity is the highest truth while still recognizing that there's truth in other religions. Okay. So I'm going to read this to you and then I'll just point out a couple of key phrases to you. So it says, the Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in these religions. And it's talking about the other religions there. The Catholic Church rejects nothing that is true and holy in these religions. She regards with sincere reverence those ways of conduct and of life, those precepts and teachings, which, though differing in many aspects from the one she holds and sets forth, nonetheless often reflect a ray of that truth which enlightens all men. Okay, now just look at that. Other religions have a ray of truth which enlightens all men. Okay, so in other words, there is a ray of truth. There is some truth in other religions. But then listen to how the document goes on. Indeed, she proclaims, she is the church there. Indeed, the church proclaims and ever must proclaim Christ, the way, the truth, and the life, in whom men find the fullness of religious life, in whom God has reconciled all things to himself. So I want you to really focus on two key phrases there. When it talks about other religions, it says those other religions have a ray of truth. When it talks about Christianity, it says Christianity is where people find the fullness of religious life. That's a really good articulation of the inclusivist perspective. Now, again, remember, we're talking about the inclusivist perspective from the Catholic Church, but you can find inclusivism in other religions as well. Okay, we're just looking at this particular example from the Catholic Church, and look at what it says there. Okay, if you read that document, it says other religions have a ray of truth. Notice how I drew the illustration. They're just like little tiny lines, rays of truth. But in Christianity, there is the fullness of religious life. And notice how on my religion, I have it as a big circle, the fullness. So that's how inclusivism understands other religions. My religion is the fullness of religious life, but there are rays of truth. There are lesser truths, small amounts of truth in other religions as well. That's the inclusivist position, and it's that position, at least for the Catholic Church, which is really a part of the kind of modern day Catholic perspective on how my religion is understood in relationship to other religions. Okay, so let's move now to our third of these three perspectives on how I understand other religions in relationship to my religion. Okay, and the third perspective is something called pluralism. All right. Now, if you think about where we've been so far, so exclusivism, my religion is the only truth. All other religions are false. Inclusivism, my religion has the highest truth, the most complete truth, but other religions do have truth as well, and salvation is possible for people in other religions, okay? And then finally, this third perspective, pluralism, where do you think that might end up? Just kind of given where number one and two were headed. Pluralism simply says all religions are equally true, are equally good ways to get to God. My religion is just one of many ways to get to God, and my religion is no better or no worse than any other religion. So if I were to try to illustrate this one, some drawing's taking me just a second to do. Okay. Pluralism would look something like this. Okay. All religions are equally good ways to get to God. They're all equally true about the human relationship with God. So there is my religion, but it's just one of many different ways to get to God. There's other religions over here, there's other religions over here, and all of these religions are equal to one another. They're all equally good ways to know God, to have truth about God, and for the human being to come to the goal of connection with God. My religion is just one of many. It's no better than anybody else. It's no worse than any other religion. All religions are equally good ways to know and reach the goal of union with God. That's pluralism. Okay, so everybody, we've talked about kind of these three different perspectives. Exclusivism, my religion is the only way. Inclusivism, my religion is the highest, best way, but there are truths and good things in other religions. That's the perspective we really see articulated by the Catholic Church at the Second Vatican Council. And then pluralism. All religions are equally good ways to get to God. My religion is just one of many, no better, no worse than anybody else. Those are the three perspectives on this question. How do I understand my religion in relationship to other different religions? And remember, again, just kind of the overall perspective here, what we're talking about are insider perspectives on religion. How is a religion understood from someone who is a member of that religion, who is a believer in that religion, who is on the inside? And that's going to be really different from what we're going to talk about in our last couple classes when we get back in person, which is going to be those outsider perspectives. How does someone on the outside of a religion look at it and understand it? Okay. And again, all of this, remember, is part 3 of our course, which is rereading religion, thinking about different ways that we can actually understand what's going on in a religion. Okay. So listen, with that, everybody, I'm going to let you go. I hope you have a good day today and a good week until I see you on Thursday of this week. Just a reminder again, when you watch this video, to also check Canvas, because I'm going to have a reading response posted on Canvas that I want you to do before Thursday's class. It'll be due 9:15 on Thursday. Okay, and that'll be the last one that we'll do. All right, you guys are a great class. Let me see if I can get him real quick. I got him. We'll have Ashta, my dog, say hello to you real quick. All right, say hi, religion students. And there he is. All right, everyone, you take care. Be well. I'll see you when we get back in person. Bye bye.